friends. Happy Thursday. So I'm setting myself up here um, to hopefully get a good angle for you guys. I'm gonna try and attempt to show you guys how I sew and like different materials and that kind of stuff, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay and all that once I sit down, because right now I'm right next to the camera. And then I also have to see what you guys can see. So I'm setting it up on the iPad. So you guys can kind of see me. Hi. I don't know if I really want you guys to see me. I don't look bad, but you know. So let me know how the volume is. If the volume is okay, like as in like, can you guys hear me okay? And then we can move forward. I'm gonna try to bring my sewing machine a little bit closer over here. You guys are seeing my side profile. Okay, that should be pretty good. But hopefully, yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Because I am a little bit further from the camera today. Hi, Louisa. I saw Lauren says she's going to set a reminder. Hello. Happy Thursday, everyone. Hey, Craft Amazing. Happy Thursday. Thanks for joining, everyone. I want to make sure that you guys can see everything and hear everything okay. I've had a lot of people request a live in regards to how I use my sewing machine with paper. So I kind of wanted to go over that. I was inspired by Kristen yesterday. She was showing, Christian, she was showing how she was doing her stamping and her different markers. And so I wanted to show you guys that, since I know a lot of you have asked me or have sent me a message, hey, can you do a video of your sewing and like any tips or tricks that you may have in regards to your sewing. You guys can see the window too. That was maintenance that just went by in the golf cart. Hi Hanava, thanks for joining. Hi Eileen, what's for dinner? Thanks for being here. So yeah, so just let me know if everything's good. Give me a thumbs up, or let me know in the comments that you guys can hear everything okay. Hey PJ, Patricia Johnson, thanks for being here. I'll wait here a little bit because I know there's a bit of a delay. Oh, Debbie, I see it. Debbie, I see the name at the end. Hi, Debbie. Happy Thursday. Shrimp and sausage stir fry. Ooh, that sounds really good. Good here. Awesome. Okay, so Luisa's saying that she can hear me very well, and it looks like you guys can see things pretty well from what I can see on my iPad. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll talk first about my sewing machine and which one I have, where I got it, and where you possibly can get it. I think sewing machines are no longer a unicorn. I don't know if you guys know, when everybody was sewing mass, sewing machines were basically sold out everywhere. Like, you could not find them for a decent price anywhere. Joann's had all their sewing machines sold out and everything. So I think you can have access to sewing machines again. I think so. I don't know. I haven't seen recently. Hi, Alicia. Happy Thursday. So I think sewing machines aren't like scarce anymore. But my sewing machine I probably got about 3 years ago. 2.5 years ago to 3 years ago is when I got my sewing machine. I did not have any previous sewing machine experience at all. Like, at all. I wasn't taught by anyone. I knew a little bit about like stitching by hand, like simple things that my mom had taught me, as in like sewing a button back or sealing something. You know, it's very simple little stitches that my mom had taught me, but I had never used a sewing machine. And so I wanted to get one because I think first it was because I wanted to do costumes. I really love Halloween. I love making my own costumes. Hi Nancy A. Happy Junior Friday. And so that's why I first got a sewing machine. I got a really cheapy one in the beginning, but it broke. And so then I got this one, which was a bit more expensive. When I got this one, I think it was like 160 or something like that. So this is a Singer Fashion Mate. I got this one from Joann's. It may have been a little bit like lowered in price. There was a discount or something going on, or a sale. But I think it's about the same price, or maybe a little bit cheaper, because it's an older model now. So maybe like 120 bucks for this machine, depending if prices did not go up. Hey Bonnie, happy Thursday. Thanks for being here. And so I got this one, yeah, from Joann's. And occasionally they have really great sales on sewing machines. That's if they have stock again. So again, this is a Singer Fashion Mate. It has a foot pedal on the bottom. You guys can't really see that, but it has this little connection here. That's for both the hookup to the electricity and then also the foot pedal. I want a small cheapy one just for paper, not using my good one for paper. I actually, Debbie, I use mine for everything. I use mine to sew my dolls. As you can see back here, I have my dolls. And I sew them. I use it for sewing my dolls. I use it for sewing masks. I use it for sewing whatever it may be, and I use it for paper. So it's pretty versatile. Like, it really works for anything. It doesn't really gunk up your machine. Unless you have, like, I guess, I've never had an issue with it getting gunky unless you're sewing through glue, which I don't recommend. But for the most part, I use this for everything. Oh, no worries, Carmen. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you have a great time at church. Yes, I do sew dolls. I was supposed to make some for Halloween, but I'll probably make some for the holiday season. Starting next month, I'll have some dolls available. Oh, I hear you, Debbie. I totally understand. Yeah, there you go. See what Bonnie said. You can change out the needle, but I totally understand if you have a more expensive machine and you want to take care of it, totally get it. But for like my purposes, mine is pretty much universal. I use it for anything, but they do have some cheaper models. It's really up to what you want to do. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about mine. I don't think it's in the crazy obnoxious price range. It's, like I said, probably about 120 bucks to get this. And what's cool about it, I'll try to get you guys a good angle here. And my phone is hooked up. I know, hopefully you guys can see things okay. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in. I'll zoom in. Okay, so you can see the name of it really well. I added just some little stickers on there, some little star stickers. But it's a Singer Fashion Mate. I don't use this button over here at all. I know it's to reverse the stitch. I don't worry about that at all. This knob on this side controls the length of your stitch. And also when I ever talk about a single stitch or a double stitch, it's in regards to this button right here. This little knob. Hey Sandra, happy Thursday, thanks for joining. So normally I have my setting for this machine. If I'd want to do a single stitch, I have it set at a number 2 for the stitch length. And guys, like I said, I'm self-taught. I'm no expert sewer. I'm just going to talk about what I do and what works for me. Hi Martina, thanks for joining. Hi Veronica, thanks for joining. So normally I have it at a number 2, and this is for a single stitch. If I want a double stitch, it's this one that says S1 with the blue, and all I will talk about here down at the bottom as well. But this does my double stitching. Let me see, make sure I'm catching up with everyone. Hi Clarissa, welcome. And let me lower my phone here so you guys can see. Just lower it a little bit so you guys can see really well. And it was going to be a little bit tricky to show you guys these things, but I'm going to try my very best. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the single stitch and the double stitch and how these two correlate. I am a new follower and so far loving all your live videos. You are a great teacher. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. I'm so happy to be back. Honestly, it's been so good. So happy. Okay, so again, normally for a single stitch, we have it at a 2. And this button down here correlates with this knob. So these two knobs correlate with each other. So if you look at the current setting, this is just a regular stitch. So you see it has a little dash lines. So it has 3, a total of 3 per design. And they correlate. And this one, I like this machine because the colors coordinate with the knob up here. So if you have the black, it has to do with the black numbers up here. If you have the blue or this teal, it coordinates with the S1 setting up here. Or the blue, see the S1? And the red coordinates with the S2. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm going over these knobs first, and then I'll go over other parts of the machines. Okay, so like I said, number 2 is the stitch length that I go for. That is a number 2. And again, if I wanted just a regular stitch, that's that one, the dash stitch, and then I have a zigzag. And honestly, I don't use all of these. This is all like you can practice on a random piece of paper, random piece of cloth to see if you like these designs. Normally, I only do the regular stitching or I do a zigzag. I stick between those two. Okay, so let's go back to the regular stitch. And I'm going to move this over to the blue setting. So when I'm doing sewing for paper crafting, normally I tell you guys I like a double stitch. So at the dash lines down here, you see you have a single one for the dark numbers. And then you have 2 lines. I know it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom you guys in even more. Okay, so the dark line here, that's a bit better. The dark line here is a single stitch. And then you see it turns into 2. That's the double stitch. To get that double stitch, I have to move this knob at the top, which you guys can't see anymore, to coordinate the colors. So blue with blue. If I wanted a triple stitch, it's the red with red. I never do triple stitch. I think that's a little overkill, but I love double stitch because the stitching looks a bit thicker. It's not just one little stitching. Occasionally, I do use the single stitch if I'm sewing something really intricate, as in like I have to move the paper a lot. Then I'll do the single stitch because it's really hard to do double stitch on that. But if you're just doing simple straight lines, that double stitch looks so much nicer. So that's what this knob is about. And if I'm going too fast, if you guys have a question, or if you want me to repeat something, I will definitely do that. And I'm going to talk about other parts of the machine now. Okay, so see if I can rotate my machine here, and then I'll zoom you guys out again. Okay, so this knob on the side right here, this is what you can rotate manually with your hand. So instead of using the foot pedal that's on the ground, it can be hard for some people to know the speed of the foot pedal. So the more you press it, it's kind of like you're driving a car. The lighter you press on the foot pedal, the softer and slower it will go. If you press harder on it, the faster the sewing will go. Or you can manually turn this forward, and that is going to let you to move the paper with your left hand, and then with the right hand control the stitching without using your foot pedal. I know, Lisa, some machines can be a lot trickier. I think this machine is a great starter. Like I said, I didn't know anything about sewing before, and this machine was really simple. I think it's really straightforward, so I highly recommend this for any beginners. It's a really great machine. Bye, Carmen. Have a great time at church. Thanks for stopping by. Again, so this is the one that I use to move my sewing forward. Oh, and of course the button to turn it on and off is here where the power cord is. Hey, Christian, thanks for stopping by. Happy Thursday. So you can see the light turning on. Ice cream truck just got here. So that's where my power button is. Okay, let's rotate this again. know, I wish I could go grab some ice cream, but I don't have any change. Okay, so let's talk about, what should we talk about next? Let's talk about these little settings at the top. So I'm going to move my camera up. Like so, and then zoom you guys in. So I have to move it a little bit more up here. And thanks for working with me while I do this. So you see those two little knobs or settings at the top? I don't really touch them. I kind of just set them and forget them. Like, you really don't have to move these around, but I will just talk about how I've set these up myself. So this one over here, I have it set at a 2, and this one over here, I have it set at a 3. Like I said, I'm no expert sewer, but that is just the settings that I have worked with. I just kind of played with it, and those are the ones that work. I think it just has to do with how loose your stitching's gonna be and how tight the stitching's gonna be. That is what I think that is. Okay. All right. So hopefully everything's making sense to everyone. I'm trying my best here to let you guys know about my sewing machine. Again, settings and knobs and all that are going to be different according to each machine, but usually the basics are there. So hopefully it does help out a little bit. And again, this is just for very beginners, or maybe someone who knows very little about a sewing machine. So hopefully it helps a little bit. Okay, let's talk about what these two, like your threads, what they're called. So I'm gonna take this out. So this right here, this is called a bobbin. And I personally have my colors all set of like my bobbins, and I will show you how you can fill a bobbin here in a minute too. Oh, perfect, Bonnie. Yes, you can also look it up. So I'm just doing a little bit of just some simple basics here, and then we'll go into how to sew on different papers. So we'll do that here in a minute, but just doing some basics in case anybody has a question in regards to that. So this is a bobbin, and that goes on the bottom compartment. And then of course you have your spool. So this up here, this is a spool. You of course have seen the smaller size. Spools come in all different sizes. And usually if you have a smaller spool, it goes in this section up here. And this little, I don't even know what this piece is called, but this holds your spool in place for the smaller ones. For these larger ones, I tend to just hook it up on top or just leave it there. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Bonnie. So yeah, so you have a spool and then your bobbin. So the spool goes at the top of your machine normally, and then your bobbin goes here at the bottom in this little compartment. All machines, where do you buy your spools? Okay, my spools are from, that's a great question. See, if you have a question or anything like that, I will address it. My spools, these larger ones, are from Joann's. Should say the brand here, Toldy-Lock. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me just make sure that I'll try to look at my iPad. Okay, so this is a Toldy-Lock brand, and it is from Joann's, and I got them for a really great price, and it says the color right there. So the color is 8285 for this lime green. And then it says the millimeter, so 2.500, and this is 100% polyester. Walmart has their anywhere you buy thread. Yeah. So I got mine from Joann's at a pretty great price for the larger spools. No worries. I've definitely been liking it. I really like it because I got basically all the colors in the rainbow for me. So meaning green, pinks, oranges, blues, etc. And then what else? Okay, so yeah, so you have your spool and then your bobbin. And then right here, I'm going to zoom you guys back in so you guys can see. Hopefully I don't make anybody too dizzy. Okay, so this right here, this is your needle. I didn't know you can use those spools on any machine. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And a great tip too, if you don't have somewhere to hook it up on your machine, you can put those spools inside of a cup. And I've done that before. You know those cups, like the Starbucks cups that have the lids and the where you would put the straw through? I would just put my my spool inside of there, have the thread come out of where the straw would come out, and then just thread it the normal way. And that kind of keeps things in place. So, you know, you can definitely use any size spool. You kind of just have to MacGyver it a little bit. Okay, yeah, so you have your needle here. That's where your needle goes. There's also, and this is pretty basic for all machines, your needle's always going to be right here. It has a little little screw right here, and that screw is where you put your needle. The needle that I use is a universal needle. Of course, you want to make sure that you look at your brand of sewing machine, and it will tell you what type of needles to get. When I say universal, it means like there's certain needles that are made specific for certain material. So think about tulle or silk or cotton, or what is the other thing? Embroidery. Like there's just a bunch of different type of needles. And I use just a universal needle for basically everything that I do. It's just a universal needle and it gets hooked right here. Again, it has a little screw, and that's how you take out your needle. So your needles look like this. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. So that is your needle. And it gets placed right in here, and you just turn the little screw to tighten it. It's been a while since I've taken this out. There we go. And there. That's how you set your needle, just with that little screw. In here is the compartment as well for your bobbin. And then it also comes with a little plastic shield to keep your bobbin in place. Don't ever lose that, because then you can't really use your machine. You'll have to get a replacement. And it tells you here, this particular sewing machine, it tells you how to feed your spool in there, or your bobbin. So basically, hopefully you guys can see that. Let me see if I can get a piece of black paper. Okay. Make sure I'm in camera range here. I'm too high up now. Bring it down here. Okay, so you see it has a little diagram of how you feed your spool. I'm glad, Christian. Trying my best. So you want to make sure that your thread is going kind of counterclockwise. So then you put your bobbin in there and you have a little bit of thread out. Hi, Connie. Happy Thursday. Thanks for being here. I feed it through. I don't do this portion anymore, but you're supposed to feed it through this little section right here, this little black section, and then it cuts it off for you. I kind of just let it hang loose. I kind of skip that step. So I just let the thread hang loose, and then I just put my plastic compartment back in. Okay. So once you have that set in, and then don't worry, we're going to go into paper sewing and all that good stuff here in a minute, once I'm done doing the basics here. Bring you guys up here. Zoom you in a little bit. This part's going to be a little bit tricky to show you guys. Okay, So now I have my my spool up at the top. So I have my bobbin set, and then I have my spool up here at the top. I'm going to pull a little bit of that thread. Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. So let me grab my camera so I can hopefully show you guys. I'm gonna disconnect it from the charger here for a minute, so I can show you a better angle on this. Okay, so this is the top of the sewing machine. As you see up here, this is where you normally would put your spool for the smaller ones. I just have mine up here at the top. It has this little rod that I can put my larger spool at the top. Okay, this is where you would put your empty bobbins to refill them, and I will show you guys that here in a minute. I'm just going to show you how I feed my thread. So I've set my spool. Hi Marie, happy Thursday, thanks for being here. Now I have my thread and my sewing machine. This is why I said it's so good for beginners, because it shows you the steps by steps of how to do everything, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, how much easier can it get, right? So nice. Not all sewing machines have that. So it says step 1, you feed your thread through that little loop. Step 2, feed it here through the back compartment. And then if you look down here, it has an arrow pointing downwards. You put your thread through there, and then I'm going to set the camera back down so you guys can see this section. Okay, then it has here step 4. I don't know, I think I can zoom in a little bit more. There we are. Then it has step 4 here, and it says you're going to go upwards. So now I put my thread upwards, like that, like so. And now I got to show you step 5. What an amazing sewing machine. Thank you, Christian. I really, really love my sewing machine. And hopefully I'm not making anybody too dizzy. Then it says step 5, you got to feed it through the top. So you have to make sure that your little section here is pointing upwards. And you can do that by controlling that knob that I had showed you guys earlier. So you can control it. So take a look over here at this piece while I'm moving this. See how it goes up or down? So you want to make sure that it's up when you're setting this piece. Bye. Thank you, Luisa. Have a great day. Okay, so now that I have this portion up, I'm going to feed my thread through there and have it go downwards, because there's another arrow for step 6 down here. Like so. Have my thread go in there, and then we'll move on to that step. It definitely is very newbie friendly. Absolutely, Alicia. Okay. Hold on while I bring you guys a little bit closer for this next step. Bring you guys down a little bit. I know it's a lot of maneuvering, guys, but to show you guys... Yes, I'm not going to sew through my finger. Hi, Amber. Thanks for the reminder. Okay. So now that my I have on step 6, you see right here, I'm on step 6. My thread is right here. Next is we're going to thread our needle. Welcome to Baby's channel. Christian, that happens more often than you think. Hey, Lana. Happy Thursday. Thanks for being here. Hey, Leslie. Okay, so there's a little kind of like metal piece right here. I know it's hard to see. I normally put my thread through there. It's just like a little loop. It's hard to see, I know. And then there's another little loop where my needle is right here, right underneath my screw. I put my thread through there as well. I thread my needle with a magnifying glass hexagonal. I hear you, Bonnie. This one actually has an automatic needle threader right here. See how it has this diagram? It shows you. See, it says right here to put the thread through that little loop that I just talked to you guys about. That is right underneath the screw. So absolutely user friendly. I highly recommend this sewing machine for any beginner. Mine has an auto threader and the sucker stopped doing it as soon as I used it just once. Oh no! I don't use my auto threader, but once I have it at this point, then I feed it through the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle is just the little hole where you would thread it through. It helps also by having really kind of like stiff thread. If it seems that your thread is kind of unraveling it and it's hard to feed it through the eye of the needle, I just snip it and have a new cut, and it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so now that I've threaded my needle, I'm going to put my thread right underneath the foot pedal, the pedal right here. So you see this little feeding pedal? I'm going to feed it right down the middle, my thread right down the middle. There's a little section there. And then just have my thread just like this, feeding out. Now that I'm at this section, we're not done yet. We need to manually turn the knob that I had showed you guys so that this thread picks up the bottom bobbin thread so we can get started. So I'm going to turn it towards me, and it's hard to see, but it feeds the thread through and it starts pulling it. And by pulling it, it's going to pull this bottom thread here. So you just kind of pull that out a little bit. Sometimes I'll put my finger through there to help bring that bottom thread out. And you can see the excess thread right here. It's going to get fed through. So I'm just going to pull that out. And now my machine is ready to go. I have both the bottom thread and the upper thread. And now my machine is ready. I know that was a lot. You guys can definitely rewatch if it was a little bit tricky, but I just wanted to show you guys kind of like the basic of how I set up my machine. So now we can move on to actually sewing on paper. Afterwards, I will show you guys how to thread a new bobbin, if you guys want to get to that point. All right, so let me set you guys back a little bit because the camera is kind of in my way. Hey Jean, happy Thursday. Zoom you guys out. And while you're doing all of that, like you're doing all the setting up of your machine, you're gonna wanna make sure that it's off. Once I've set it and everything, now I've turned on my machine, once it's all ready to go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about sewing on paper, cardstock, ephemera, all sorts of different things here. So first of all, we'll start with something a bit more simple. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, this is that small table that I told you guys that I got from IKEA. This is considered a laptop desk. So it's thinner, but it's perfect for my sewing machine. And then on the sides, you can kind of see it down here. If you look at where my hand is underneath the table, those are my small file cabinets. I have one on each side, and it contains all of my fabric. And those are from IKEA as well. So they're smaller, but it's perfect for the size of my room. It's perfect for just my sewing machine. Okay, so let's start with something simple. see if I can find a square ephemera, because those are easy to do. I may have to just grab a square myself. Because, well, I guess we can do it with this one. There's a bit of curvature here, and we can talk about curves when we get to that point. Okay, so this is just an ephemera piece, just a journaling card. And we're going to do some sewing on this. And we'll move this out of the way and we'll get to those other things here in a minute. Maintenance is definitely out and about. You guys can see them all in the background. Okay. So I knew that this was going to be tricky to show you guys. It's always really, really tricky to show you the sewing process, but I will try my very best. Currently, my needle is in the upwards position. You don't want it down below into the compartment, because then you can't put your paper inside. So you want to make sure that your needle is in the up, like highest setting that it can. And you can do that by controlling the knob on the right side of the machine that I had shown you guys. So when I start off sewing on an ephemera, I'll start off on a corner. So I'm going to start right here on this little corner of this journaling card. And you want to line it up right underneath the needle. And then with the knob, I'm going to lower it very gently, and you want to make sure you kind of either have a longer piece of thread excess here on the side, or hold it with your hand, because it could come out of the needle itself, and then you'll have to rethread it. So kind of hold it, or just have excess amount of thread here on the side so that it doesn't unthread itself. So I'm going to place that right in the corner, and I currently have it set at that double stitching that I had told you guys about here in the beginning. This is called the presser foot. There is a leveler here at the back, like a little up and down portion. I currently have it on the up portion. When I have my needle through my paper, that's when I put the presser foot down. And that holds kind of like the project in place, so that the needle isn't going everywhere and the threading isn't all crazy and wacky. You want to make sure that presser foot is down with whatever that you're sewing, whether it's like fabric or paper or whatever you may be using for your material. Okay, and then I'm going to go with the pedal here at the bottom and just lightly press it. You can test this out, like how much pressure you need on a just random piece of paper or random fabric. How far am I on the edge? I'm basically at the corner, pretty much at the corner. That's where I start. So, are you saying from the edge of the paper right here? I'm probably about 1/8 of an inch, so 1/8 of an inch away from the side of the paper. If you're too close to the edge, then it's going to get wonky, and it might be harder to control it going straight like you're sewing. And then you're gonna sew outside of the paper, and that's just a whole mess. So you want to make sure you're either about 1/8 of an inch off the edge. And I will try my best to bring you guys here a little closer without it being too much in my way. There we are. Yeah, so it's about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And you can be further inwards to your material, to your ephemera piece, as you start practicing. You don't have to get too close. Once you're a little bit more, you've sewn a bit more and you have a little bit more experience, then you can get closer to the edge as you get a better control of it, a better feel of it. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to start sewing, and I want to make sure there's like little lines. You can kind of see them here on the camera. I try to align my items to that, so as long as I'm going straight to those lines, it really helps. But you can also eyeball it just by looking at where you're sewing. So keep an eye on the needle, so you make sure that you're going straight. So I'm going to lightly press on my machine. You see it starts going up and down. And it goes backwards. It goes one forward and one backwards when I'm doing double stitching. You don't want to go, you can't, like someone will ask me, okay, can I do a single stitch and then go back over it to mimic that double stitch? I wouldn't recommend that, because basically what you're doing to your paper is you're perforating your paper, and you're going to go back again to do another stitching on top of that. It's going to rip your paper. So either do double stitching from the beginning or just stick to a single stitch. Hey Lexi, thanks for being here. Happy Thursday. Okay, so I'm just going really slow. You know, as you get a feel for it. Since I'm a little bit more experienced, the speed that I normally go at for straight edges is this. So that's not as fast as it can go. It can go faster than that, but that's normally about the speed that I go at since I'm a little bit more experienced. I've had a couple years using my machine. Hey Ginger, thanks for being here. Happy Thursday. Okay, and as I get closer to the edge, that's when I manually move my little knob on the side that I had showed you guys. And I focus, because remember, it goes one forward and one back. So right now it's going to go one forward, and I know it's going to go one back and one forward again in the same place. That's what creates that double stitch. And then since I'm close to the edge, I'm not going to keep going this way since I'm already at the edge. Hey Ebony, happy Thursday. Thanks for being here. When I'm at this point, when I'm at the point where I'm going to rotate my paper, I lift that presser foot and I rotate my paper like so. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy your lunch. So yeah, so you rotate your paper. That's why I wanted to show you guys with a straight edge, like just a regular square ephemera, because it gets a little bit tricky when you're doing like curved edges. So if I were to just do two straight edges, it's simple. Just rotate it to the next edge and go straight again, rotate it again, go straight again, and rotate it one more time and go straight again. So that's really simple for just straight edges, no curves. But this particular one has this little curved edge, so I have to do that manually. I can't do that with the pedal, because it'll go too fast, and sometimes I can press too hard, and I can't have good control of my sewing machine with that. So when you have this rotated, you're going to push that presser foot down, and I'm going to manually start following that curve of the paper. One stitch at a time. Remember, this is forwards and backwards. Ebony, maybe you could check out the beginning of the video when it's back up. You can rewatch that portion, and it might help for you to find it on your sewing machine. But like I was telling everyone, I highly recommend this one because it's very user-friendly for beginners. Okay, so once I have that single stitch, I'm going to rotate my paper a little bit without lifting the presser foot, so I can continue to follow that curved edge. Again, one stitch at a time. And since this is a very close curve, I'm just rotating it just the tiniest bit. Okay, rotate it again. And again. And one more time. I'm at the edge of the paper. So I've curved that edge, and now I'm going to rotate my paper so I can follow the straight edge of this ephemera piece. Yes, I do, Christian, and we're going to get to chipboard also on how I do that. But I do, for the most part, I do it manually, unless they're like it's chipboard that is straight edges. Then I'll do a little bit with my foot pedal. and then most of it manually with my hand, so turning the knob without using the foot pedal. Okay, so now that I'm at a straight edge, I'm going to sew this portion. And I'm not going to continue and follow through with this entire ephemera piece since I want to be able to get to everything else. So I'm just going to show you guys what this looks like so far, and we'll move on to something else. So let's say this was finished. I want to make sure that my needle is in its most highest position. Then I lift my presser foot and pull my project to the left side, push my presser foot back down, and I'm going to cut this. Let me grab my scissors. I should have had those ready. Okay. And now I'm just going to cut the thread on my paper. I can turn my speed right down so it's like turning the handle. Oh, awesome. See, it depends on your sewing machine for sure. On which sewing machine you have, you can do different things with each machine. So this is what I currently have for this ephemera piece. See how I have this excess? This is the excess thread that we started with at the beginning. I'm just going to cut that off. And you can be as clean as you want or clean that up afterwards. But this is what I currently have. So hopefully you guys can see that okay. So I have my straight edge. And this is where I kind of did it with manually by hand by turning that knob so I can follow that edge. And then again, went straight. And this is how it looks a little bit thicker with that double stitch setting. I think it looks a lot nicer than the single stitch. Single stitch is still really nice, but I personally like the double stitch. So that is just a regular piece of paper, regular ephemera piece. Does anybody have any questions, or does that make sense? We can move on to the next thing, or we can do another ephemera piece if you guys have a question. But it pretty much answered in regards to straight edges and in regards to curved edges. Okay, so I'm going to set this off to the side and we'll get another piece of, another type of paper. One needle for the double stitch. Yeah, so I use the same particular, I use the same needle for everything. So this is a universal needle. I never change that out unless it breaks on me because I'm sewing something thicker when I'm doing my dolls, for example, vinyl. And I'm like sewing that and I accidentally break my needle. Okay, so let me grab something else. Okay, so here I have a bow that I've die cutted. And I'm only going to be using, because this portion where it has like the hearts, the kind of like lacy part right here, I have a holographic piece that's going to go there. So let me grab that. Which is this one. So I want the holographic piece to be the one that's going to show through. And then the pattern paper is the portion that's going to go right on top of this. I would sew this first before cutting this off because the larger the material, the easier it is to sew. The smaller it is, the more difficult it gets. So that's why huge props to Shara Crane when she sews things that are so tiny. That's how I got a needle through my finger, by sewing something so tiny. Plus I was live, so I was multitasking. But sewing things that are small, it's really hard to do that with the machine. You have to be very slow and pay really close attention. So I like things that are larger, and then afterwards I'll go in and cut. So same thing. Hey, Scrap and Craft Queen, happy Thursday. Same thing for ephemera. So let's say I have a strip of phrases. instead of cutting those first and then sewing them, I'll sew them all so how I want them. Let's say they're rectangles, so each one, and then afterwards go and cut it, because it's, like I said, easier to sew something larger than something smaller. I never made a sound when you went through your finger. I know. Oh, that was the worst though. Okay, so yeah, so easier to sew something that is larger. So I'm going to go ahead and do my sewing on this. Where I'm going to cut this portion is basically where you see this kind of like perforated edge. You see that perforation? That's where I'm going to cut all this part out. So my stitching for this, or my sewing, is going to have to be 1/8 of an inch inside of that, all the way around. So same thing, I like starting at a straight edge, and my straight edge here is really, really tiny. So I'm going to start with that. It's probably only going to take about 2 stitchings, and then we're going to go into that curved edge. So again, lift my presser foot, and I'm going to bring my needle down, and I want to make sure that it's 1/8 of an inch, and you have to get really close in there. I have basically like my face literally like right here. You guys saw my hair. You have to be pretty close to that so you can see what you're doing. Then bring that presser foot down, and I'm going to do this portion manually because, like I said, it's super tiny, and it's only going to take about 2. Okay. So once that's ready, I'm going to rotate my paper so I can start my curved edge. And I usually do one manually with my hand and then go with my pedal after that. Longer curves like this, I can use my foot pedal because I can control that curve just by rotating my paper as I'm sewing. If it's a smaller, more tinier curve like we were doing with the other ephemera piece, then do that all with your knob. But because this is a larger one, it'll be easier to control. So see how I'm rotating my paper just ever so slightly as I'm following that curve. And you can go slower to be more precise. That's what like Sherry Crane and Adriana, they go really, really slow. I tend to go a little bit faster. So it may be not perfect, but I don't mind as long as overall it looks pretty decent. Patricia, I don't really know. I'm no expert in regards to the reverse stitch. I don't really use it. I think that's just to close off a stitching. I'd have to Google it myself or YouTube that, but I never use it for paper crafting. Okay, so keep going with this. See how I did this portion manually because it's a little bit smaller? So I have to be a little bit more detailed right there. That's where my other curve starts. So again, do that manually and go back to my foot pedal. Again, manually, since I'm reaching the end of this bow, rotate it. And just like the other side, do the little side, like straight edge manually, and rotate my paper once again. Let me catch up on comments here. Abby have to go Halloween store for kids costume. We'll watch the replay. Bye, Christian. Thanks for stopping by. Have fun. So let me finish this off and we'll move on to chipboard after this. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate it. Okay. Now that I'm done with that, same thing, make sure your needle's at the highest point. Pull this out, close your presser foot, your presser foot right here, and I'm going to cut this. Then I have that little excess that we started at the beginning. I'm going to cut that off too. And this is what we have so far. So see how it's not perfect? This one worked out a little bit better, but this one is a little bit wonky here. I am not stressing about that. You just have to to get a little bit more precise with that, you have to be pretty much close. I just don't want you guys seeing the back of my head. I'd have to get really, really close in there to make sure I'm following the edge really, really well. But it's kind of hard when I'm doing a video of this and I don't want to block the camera. But that just takes going a little bit slower with your sewing and making sure you're keeping an eye where your needle is going. Okay, so that's how you sew that. Afterwards, like I said, what I would do is I would cut where the perforation is. I had showed you guys. Just make sure you do not cut where the thread is. That's why you wanted it to not be too close to that perforation. So I'm going to cut this off. All that little lacy bit part. Hey, Abby can't sleep, so I thought I would come watch the live. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you'll get a chance to sleep. Okay, so I'm going to cut all of this off because I'm going to put that holographic portion. So I'm layering my bow die, and I'm sure you guys have seen this done before. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Sophie. Hopefully you'll hear from them soon. Okay, so now that I have this cut, this will get layered on top of the holographic one, like so. And now I have not only a layered bow, but it also has some sewing on there. And then I would glue that and I'll put my bow together. Well, I would train the edges. So again, break down those fibers, glue it down, and then put my bow together. Yes, when a bow is not made, it really does look like a bra, Sophie. Especially with the laciness that's going on here. That's too funny. But that is sewing a bow, and with those curves. Okay, so now I'll set that one to the side and we'll move on to chipboard. And lastly will be a spider web. I'm just grabbing a chipboard here. I have some stuff on top of it, so give me a minute here. This is the I know you guys can only see a little bit of it, but this is the spider web that I'm going to show you guys how to do some sewing on. Okay, so we're going to start off with a simple chipboard piece that has a lot of straight edges. So I have this tag, and it has a lot of little straight edges. So it'll be really simple to sew this one. It currently still has the adhesive on the back because I wanted to talk about that. You do not want to sew with the adhesive on there because of course it's going to get stuck in your machine and it's going to be really hard to move it around. So basically what I do is I take off that adhesive just by peeling it. I'll peel that adhesive off and just throw it away. So I haven't taken any layers off this chipboard. My sewing machine can sew through this like this. If you have a hard time sewing through chipboard, What you can also do is peel back some of those layers. You don't want to go too much because it is a chipboard piece, right? You don't want to lose too much of its chipboard quality or its effect. So just peel back a few layers. I want a sewing machine. Okay, just peel back those layers. And if it only does a portion here, then you're going to have to peel the other side. Like it only did a corner here for me. So I'm going to peel some of this side. And then again, I got to do it at the top, because it only peeled basically the bottom half. And you don't have to do this if your sewing machine can really handle this. But if it's tricky for you or your sewing machine can't handle it, so peel back some of those layers of the chipboard. And try to make it as even as you can. Where did you get your sewing machine and what was the price? So my sewing machine is a Singer Fashion Mate, and I got it from Joann's. I got it for like 140, 160, but I'm pretty sure it's like 120 right now. So wait till they have like deals or anything like that. But I know with COVID, it was a little tricky to get your hands on a sewing machine, so I don't know what their inventory looks like. But Joann's tends to have really great deals on sewing machines, or you can look online to see where they may have this particular machine, which is very user-friendly and very friendly for newbies. I've been watching The Great British Sewing Bee, and I want to make clothes. Oh, yes. I want to get to that point, too. Just start out nice and slow. Yes. If you're doing sewing on chipboard, you want to go gently and slowly because you don't want to break your needle. How would I know if my machine can handle chipboard? I've never tried it. I'm scared. So Jean, what I would do is start off with a chipboard piece where you've peeled off at least half the chipboard. So that way that you can try it manually. So don't use your foot pedal. You want to turn the wheel, use the wheel, see if it goes through. Yes, exactly what Amber said. So use your wheel to see if it goes through. If you find that it's really hard to go through, then I wouldn't recommend it. It's the needle and the power of the machine. It will let you know. You don't want to force it, because if you force it, then you're going to break your needle, and then that's no fun. Absolutely, Amber. Okay. So now that I have this ready to go, once again, I'm going to start at an edge. So I'm going to start at the edge up here and then work my way around. Again, 1/8 of an inch from the outside, or as far in as you want. It just depends, but I go 1/8 of an inch and then have it go through. So it is harder than, you're going to notice there's a difference between sewing paper and sewing chipboard. It's a bit harder. So sewing through paper is really easy. It goes in like butter, in and out. So, sewing through chipboard, you'll notice there's a little bit of resistance, but my sewing machine is strong enough to handle it. If it's really hard, then yeah, your sewing machine isn't meant for it, and you can end up breaking your machine. Mine will sew through 10 sheets of paper, no problem. So maybe mine will go through chipboard. Yeah, just test it out. Be very gentle and very go in with it easy and slowly. Ooh, Christmas cards. That's still crafting, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my knob. And I'm doing double. So see, there is resistance. It's a bit of a resistance on there. So you can just use your knob to manually do that. I use my my foot pedal just because I know my machine can handle it, and I can go a little bit faster on these straighter edges. If my chipboard piece was very curvy and stuff like that, then that would require a lot of use of your hands. If you have arthritis or any issues with your wrists, it can take a toll on there. So I would highly recommend that you look up exercises for your wrists. So, you know, kind of like, I'm going to put it right here because I have my camera zoomed in, where you would push your hand on the table and just kind of like work on the flexibility of your wrist, because it can take a toll. For me, it tends to hurt my wrist if I'm doing a lot of stitching. So take breaks, or really consider, is this going to hurt me too much? I would just not do sewing on chipboard, because it is a lot of work. You should try it, Ebony, if you know, like I said, just a little bit at a time and see if it works out. Okay, so I'm using my foot pedal again because I already know my sewing machine can handle it. Oh no, yeah, Sophie, then I would take it easy. Hi, Liz. Thanks for joining. I'm using a Singer Fashion Mate. I got it from Joann's about 2 years ago. But if you look it up online, you may be able to find some retailers that sell it. But it's a really user-friendly, newbie-friendly machine. Okay, see, right now I'm using my presser foot, but going very slow. Or my foot pedal, sorry. And again, as I'm getting closer to the edge, I move my knob for that. Once again, lift my presser foot, rotate my piece, just like I did with my other, when I was sewing on paper, and then start on the next edge. Hi, Lala. Thanks for joining. I hear you, Sophie. Are you using a certain needle? I just use a universal needle. So make sure that it fits in your machine. But remember, there's like different types of sewing needles. This one's called a universal needle. So make sure, because you don't want to use like a needle that's meant for like silk. It's too thin and it's going to break on you. A universal needle for me handles chipboard. You could, of course, there's also needles that are made for leather. So perhaps one of those may work even better on chipboard, but a universal one tends to work for a variety of things for me. Is a darn good machine going through there like that? Yeah, I love it. It's very strong and it's been reliable. No problem, Liz. Embroidery needle is a good one as well. See, there you go. Could you hand stitch? I'm sure you can. It just would take some time to do so. But I would think if you have like a daw needle, do I have them with me? I don't have them where I can reach them. But, you know, not your regular sewing needles, the really thin ones. I would use a daw needle. They're bigger and they're bigger and they're thicker. And you can definitely do that by hand. It's just a lot of work. So props to you if you do it by hand. And it's a lot of force too. It's chipboard, so it's going to require some force. You're going to want to make sure you're wearing protection on your fingers to not get a needle through your finger. Yes, there you go. See, Liz said you can punch the holes first. Okay, so I'm going to start on my next one, on my next edge. Once again, as I get closer to my edge, I do that by pressing or turning the knob. Then rotate my piece. And we'll do another straight edge. Oh, I hear you, Sophie. I don't think I have a scar from the time that I got this needle straight through my finger. It went through the nail. Luckily, it didn't hit my bone. I kind of thought about that afterwards. I'm like, oh my gosh. You guys would have definitely heard me during that live if that needle had gone through my bone. Like, that's when you have to go to the emergency. I still went to the emergency room. No, I didn't go to the emergency room. I went the next day to the nurse's station just to get a Tdap booster, so a tetanus shot booster. But it luckily did not go through the bone. It was kind of like it missed it. It just went through the squishy part in and out. Oh, ouch, Sophie. I'm always scared of leaving needles around. Oh, that sounds painful. Okay. So now I keep my fingers like as far away from here. Like that time I had it right here because I was feeding something really, really small. So like I said, sewing through something small, I'm kind of afraid ever since I got a needle through there. But sewing something small, I'm having to like use my little fingers here. And what ended up happening, I was live, I think I was reading a comment or something and my finger went straight. I think it was something happened. It went through my finger and it was just painful. You remember, Jean? Yeah. I kept quiet pretty well. I just went to wash my finger and put a Band-Aid on. Yes, Sophie, you should. You were there too, Amber? I know you reminded me today, so be careful. You can hear it too. You hear the difference between sewing on paper and sewing on chipboard. There's a little bit more resistance because it's thicker. I can go one more time and then I'll work on that small straight edge. That small straight edge, because it's really tiny, basically like 1/2 inch, I'm going to do that. Well, actually I can probably do that with my pedal too, but I have to just do it very slowly. Okay, and then manual. Rotate it to do that straight edge. Sometimes what could end up happening with chipboard is that it'll break your thread. So then you'll just have to rethread your machine and start where you left off. It depends on the strength of your thread. All right, now that I finished there, again, lift this up, make sure that my needle is at the highest position, pull my chipboard out, close the presser foot, and cut my thread, cut the excess here, and on the back. And that is a stitched chipboard. She seriously never made a sound, just heard the machine make a loud noise that she said, "Be right back." Yes, the machine did make a loud noise, and that was, yeah, I will not forget that. Some bad word. Yeah. Really don't know how she didn't make a sound. I think I was more in shock, Amber. This is your sewing machine for just paper. No, Liz, I use my sewing machine for everything. For paper, for my dolls, for clothes, for masks. I use it for everything. I haven't had an issue at all. And I've had my machine for 2 years, 2.5 years, and I haven't had an issue except for like needle breaking or putting like, and that was because I was sewing through vinyl and very thick material that my needle broke. And what else? Well, getting the needle through my finger, but that was a user error. But I haven't had any issues in regards to going from paper and going to other materials. I hear you, Sophie. Good to know. I always fear that using paper will ruin my machine. I haven't had any issues, Liz, but if you have like a really expensive machine and you don't want to risk it, then that's up to you, but I personally have had no issues. Almost look like something leather. I know, I love how it looks because of that double stitching. Remember, this is doing that double stitching. If I did single stitch, it wouldn't look as thick as it does right here. So I love that look. I really, really like it. And that straight edge, that just takes practice. You know, don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think the wonkier, the more character it has. So that's just me. But that is chipboard. Does anybody have any other questions in regards to chipboard? I don't think I'm going to stitch anything too curvy. I've already showed you how to do curves. So the same thing applies with chipboard. You'll do that all manually, and you just have to be rotating it and going slowly to do those more curved chipboard. Is that a setting on your machine? Double stitching. Yes, Liz. I went over it at the beginning, so if you want, you can rewatch the replay, and maybe by looking at it, you might be able to figure out if your machine does that as well. No worries, Amber. Okay. So now that I've done stitching on chipboard, we're going to do just one more thing. I have trouble with my bottom stitch. It's wonky. Okay, so Marie, that may have to do with your other settings, as in, let me zoom out here. So remember I had talked about these two? If you've been watching in the beginning, play with those. So that is the tension of your stitch. So play with those a little bit, either go more to the right or go more to the left, depending on your machine. And there's another one over here until you're able to test it out on a random piece of paper, a random piece of material. And then you'll notice, okay, is it getting better? Is it looser? Is it tighter? Is it, play with that. That's what I did. Like I said, I'm no expert. I don't know all the terms in this, but I just played with these and it helped me to basically troubleshoot my stitching. So I hope that helps. My question is, when you get a sewing machine, how will you know if your machine can sew through chipboard? What would need to look for a sewing machine to cut through such material? So, Lexi, what I would recommend is first to make sure that you have a universal needle. So I don't want you guys seeing my nose. First, to make sure that you have a universal needle. So you want to make sure that your needle is strong enough. So I would go to the store, like Joann's or whatever, and find the needles that fit your machine and look for something that's called a universal needle. And then put that into your machine and then slowly test it out on your chipboard. So again, manually. So if there's going to be some tension, don't be afraid of that. There's going to be some tension, but it's like crazy, you really cannot fit it through that that chipboard, then maybe your machine isn't strong enough for it. But if it goes in and comes back out, then try it out. Do it again. Just go manually at first. Don't even use your foot pedal. But I highly recommend to make sure you have a universal needle in there. Anything thinner is going to break, more than likely. Also, take out layers of chipboard in the beginning, and then slowly try it out. So take out a bunch of layers, and then next time try it out with a few more layers not taken out, and then fully just taking off just the adhesive and see if it fits through. So it's all a matter of just troubleshooting. Yes, what Sophie said, practice makes perfect. Okay, so now we're going to talk about an embroidery needle is pretty close to universal if you just happen to have one in hand. Yep, there you go. But usually needles come, I don't think I have it in here. I have it in my embroidery box. See, this little piece for this machine comes out and it's a container. Nah, I don't have anything in here. This little container, you can put your excess bobbins or your excess needles in here. And that just comes in and out of my machine. Most machines have something like that, a little compartment. But I don't have them on hand where I can show you. But usually it comes in a little box with all the needles, and it'll say on there universal thread, or like, you know, the gauge, so the thickness of the needle goes up or down. Do Americans have the song Wind the Bobbin Up? I don't know. I've never heard of it, Sophie. Okay, so let's talk about crazier things. This is more like advanced stitching. When you want to do something that's a bit more detailed like this, like I did on my box that I'm going to have for auction tomorrow in the evening. So for me, what I usually do is, of course, measure this out to whatever project I'm using. So if you have this smaller, this is really big. You can have smaller ones and it's less stitching, but this guy would require more stitching since he's bigger. I would measure this out to my corners and then cut this down and then stitch. You know, because I don't want to sew the entire thing and only need one corner. Speaking of larger items, so this is a really good thing to bring up. I don't have too much space here. You see? I don't have very much space here. They make sewing machines like this because usually material that you're putting through your sewing machine is fabric, which is very pliable. You can move that around, you know, it can feed through here, like turned like this. But if it's something thicker, thank you, Marie, I appreciate it. If it's something thicker like acetate, or I'm sewing a box and it's like really big, you're not going to be able to fit that through here. unless you're bending it, and some material you cannot bend. So you have to take that into consideration. What I do in a case like that, if it's a box, I'll sew one end, take the whole thing out, cut my thread, and sew another edge. So that way I'm keeping my larger bulk of my material on the outside of the machine. I hope that makes sense. So just keep that in mind, that you can't fit things that are too rigid through here. So keep everything on your left side, so you have all this open space to work with. Anything that's pliable, like this guy, I can fit through here, no problem, you know, because I can bend this and feed it through. But yeah, so just be mindful of the space that you have here and keep things to your left. So like this, for example, I would start this on this side of the sewing because I have my bulk of my material to the left, to the outside of my machine. Okay, so for sewing this spider web, it's going to require me to take this in and out several times because there's like so many pieces that don't interconnect, or I'll have to take it out, cut my thread, and start another edge. That's basically patience with this. This takes time, it takes patience, it takes precision. How I save myself time from having to go like in and out all the time, I'll focus on what areas connect. So for this spider web, I can do this entire bottom section without going anywhere, you know? So I'll focus first, like it's kind of like a maze. Okay, so if I start over here, I can go all the way around my spider web and I'll end up here. And then I don't have to cut it just yet because I can go upwards here. I can go all the way up, and then hey, I don't have to cut it just yet because I can go down. And then when I hit here, because I've hit another edge that's already sewed, that's when I would cut it, take it out, and focus on another one. I would probably start over here, go up, go down, and then start again, go up, go down. I hope that makes sense. You know, cut the time down for yourself, focus on edges that kind of meet, and you can do that first. So let's get started. I'm going to start on this edge over here because like I said, this edge will go all the way around, go up, and then go down. And I can do that without having to take it out, spend that time to cut my thread, attach it, you know what I mean. It just saves you time. Oh, another thing. While I'm doing this, because I was like, okay, maybe I could rotate this. No, if you rotate this, the ugly side, because you're perforating this paper. So let me show you with my ephemera piece that we did. So look at this. So the top portion, anywhere that you want the pretty stitching to be, you want it to be facing upwards. This is really important because it's perforating the paper. It's not going to look as pretty on the back side. So keep that in mind. The top, so what you want to look pretty is going to go on top. The back side isn't going to look as pretty because the paper is perforated. Especially if it's darker paper, you're going to notice that perforation even more. So you have to make sure that the part that you want the pretty stitching to be on is faced up. So I hope that makes sense. I think I'll come live with you so you can teach me all of this. Okay, so I'm going to start over here. Starting at the edge. All right, and then like I said, let's zoom in here so you guys can see and not see my face. All right, make sure that this is on. It is. And then I'll start doing my sewing. Oh, here is a great example of something that just happened. Hopefully you guys can see that. Because this is like a little piece of paper, it's starting to get fed into my machine. I don't want that to happen. I know it's really hard to see, but you have to be mindful. So start maybe a little bit more in the paper so your paper doesn't accidentally get fed in there. That happens to me with material as well. If that is happening, all I do is I have to lift my presser foot up and I can't pull this out. See, I can't pull this out. What I need to do is rotate instead of towards me, my little knob on here, it's away from me to kind of lift that up. And then I can pull that out. So things like that happen. I'm glad that that happened because you have to be mindful of that. I hope that makes sense. If you pull the thread tails, it helps to prevent that. See, oh, perfect. Thank you, Liz. That is a good idea. So holding the thread tails with your left hand will help to not let things get fed into that compartment. I'm just going to start this again. Cut that thread again. And we'll start that. Once again, I'm going to go a little bit more in. There we are. And because this is so thin, it's so delicate, you just have to take your time with it. This first portion is probably going to look wonky, but it's okay. Okay, so once I get to my corner, I'm going to rotate my paper here a little bit so I can work on this curve. And it's not looking really cute right now because I would have normally cut this down a little bit, but it's okay. I could probably cut that portion off. And this is also really thin. Like I said, sewing smaller things I'm not a fan of because it's so hard to stay in the center. I'm having a hard time, especially because I'm recording. Just try your best. Okay, so let me see the comments. Gotta go make dinner. I'll catch the replay. Bye, everyone. Bye, Patricia. Bye, Patricia Johnson. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great dinner. We're pretty much done here. I'm just going to show you guys this little portion. And like I said, this just requires patience. I would have some really awesome music blasting while I'm doing this, or watching something like a show or a movie. You hear that noise? That means that my thread up here, because it's a large spool, it got stuck. So I have to be really careful. So you'll listen to your machine. The more you play with it, the more you understand the normal noises of your sewing machine. If there's something that sounds off, then clearly that you got to stop and then assess what's going on. It could be that it got tangled and you have to cut it. That stuff happens. Just, you know, be mindful of the sounds that your sewing machine is making. I could probably go a little bit more inwards here. Now I can rotate it. Are you using anything to guide you while you sew? I am not really using a guide. I just focus at where the needle is going. Because like I said, I'm on camera. I'm not going as carefully as I normally do, but it's just focusing on the needle, you know, making sure that it's in the center of this. I kind of just guide it on the center of my foot pedal. So I want to make sure that there's like a little slit in there. I want to make sure that that stays in the middle of where I'm sewing. I hope that makes sense. And the slower you go, the more precise you can be. But like I said, I'm doing this live. I don't want to bore you guys to tears. So I'm not being as careful as I normally would be. And I can tell, like in my sewing, I'm like, it's not too cute, but it's okay. Plus, I'm also in an awkward position in the way that I'm sewing. As in, my chair is not in the right place and my machine is not in its normal place, so it's not the prettiest. Okay, let me cut this little excess here. I think to myself, no one can attack me in my craft room. I'm armed. Oh, the crime podcast while you craft. Okay, so see, it's not that pretty at all. I tried my best. This part's not too bad. Here it got a little bit wonky again, a little bit better. It's just hard when I'm not in my, you know, get really comfortable. Make sure you're in a comfy position. You have a comfy chair. Your sewing machine is in a comfy position, because all that makes a really big difference. But I mean, if you saw my box, it looks much nicer than this. The actual spider web looks a lot nicer in the sewing than this, because I'm doing this live currently. But that's pretty much it, guys. That is chipboard, that is paper, ephemeras, curve, double stitching, single stitching, all that good stuff. See, yeah, I mean, don't worry about wonkiness. Like, this is a Halloween project. The wonkiness, you can play with it. You can do different things to kind of hide that. If there's a place that you really messed up, well, think about it when you're doing layering of chipboard or ephemera. Just cover that up with something. No big deal, you know? So there's ways to cover up those boo-boos. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you guys have any other questions, if I didn't go over something quite right, let me know and I'll be able to address it for you. Send me a message over on Instagram. I'm more likely to respond to it if you send me a message on Instagram. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope that at least you guys learned something, if you're new to it. And if you did, if you don't mind giving a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Yeah, have a great night, Amber. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys all have an amazing Thursday. Tomorrow I will probably go live again just to show you guys what's inside the box. Once I have it, we can put the box together. We can put the box together. So all the goodies that I've made so far, we can package everything. That'll be earlier in the day. Probably we'll stick to 1 p.m. We'll stick to 1 p.m. to going live again tomorrow to put together the Happy Mail box, because that's going to go up for auction at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on my Instagram for 24 hours. So we'll go live again then. Have a great rest of the day. Bedtime. Go to sleep, Sophie. Bye. Bye, Lana. Thank you, Lexi. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks, Marie. I think this is my first live YouTube. Thanks for joining, Liz. I was happy to see you here. Thanks for being here. Of course, Marie. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Have a wonderful night. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.